There is a life force, a vitality, an energy, quickening, that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will not exist in any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares to the expressions of others. It is your business to keep it yours, clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to stay open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. No artist is pleased. There is no satisfaction whatever at any point. There's only a queer divine dissatisfaction, blessed unrest. Keeps us marching and makes us more alive than others. Martha Graham. Welcome to the channel. Here we're going to talk to creative people about creative things and investigate what it is that makes us the way that we are and all the things that we do. I'm joined here by my fantabulous co-host, Chris Davis. Welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah. I'm very excited for our guest today.
This is going to be a good one for sure. Yeah. You know Meg pretty well, right?
I do. I mean, I don't think I know her as well as you do. I've seen her at parties and we've hung out a few times. She's come to the parlor, but I haven't had a chance to really sit down and get into it and talk to her much.
This is going to be to know her is to love her. I mean, I'll say that. But you know, this is like a show where we interview artists and creative people. I think Meg is brings a very interesting cross section of creativity. So, she is, the founding creative. She created this amazing food festival in Tulsa called Big Bite. She's done a lot of marketing and brand strategy work, which I think is an art form in and of itself. So she's worked for the New York Times, the food publication Delish. Mm-hmm. She did brand work for Ben & Jerry's ice cream, which I feel like is a brand that everybody loves. Oh, yeah. She actually thought of the name Ben & Jerry's.
Really?
No, that's not true.
Okay.
I think she joined after the brand was established, but pivotal in some of their, big marketing campaigns for sure.
Nice.
But I feel like she and I are really on a similar wavelength in a lot of things, but her whole kind of spiritual vibe, she'll tell you exactly what she did, but she's got, she's gone through a certification process to be a spiritual director, a vocational coach. She's a tarot practitioner, which I think is I've been getting more interested in that art form in the last 12 months or so. So I'm interested for her to share more about that. But she's definitely an artist, but I would say a different type of artist than anyone that we've had on the show so far. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into a conversation, ask her questions, and just get to see where we go.
Yeah.
I think with that, it's time for us to welcome our guest, Megan Shepard.
Woo!
Hi, guys.
Megan.
Hello.
See you. Welcome.
Thank you. I brought you guys some
flowers.
Oh
my gosh. Oh, you know what? Love flowers.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Doing good.
Okay.
Meg, are you what's your experience with podcasting? Have you done many podcasts?
I haven't myself done few podcasts, but I used to work in podcast marketing. So I was sort of adjacent to the world and watching the sausage get made. So this is a fun opportunity to be on the other side. I
feel like you're one of those people that you kind of like me and Trueson, when we have conversations, it's this feels like a podcast anyway. So it's this feels like this should be comfortable for you.
Yeah. I feel like most of our friendship is talking on a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, just whether or not there's actual cameras rolling and
whether there's
audio.
Listenership, who knows? But
yeah.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
I have some questions. I'm curious to know what is your favorite part of your creative practice right now, at least in this moment?
My favorite part of my creative practice currently is probably my writing or my gardening.
Ooh, gardening.
My gardening might be my favorite part of my
What is it about
practice.
gardening?
There's so much I love about it. I'm a budding gardener. This is my third year experimenting with growing.
You said the flowers that you brought us came from your garden. Is that right?
They came from my garden.
Yeah.
We've got celosia and zinnia and lavender and some snapdragon, all kinds of beautiful things. I think one of the things I love most about gardening is the spiritual practice of it, frankly. You plant things, you hope for the best, but it's a lot of do what you can and then let the plants do what they're going to do. So I find that kind of cathartic. And, sometimes you'll plant something, it won't work out, or maybe you need to move it to another pot or another bed or another space to give it a real chance to bloom. And I don't know, I just love the idea that you can start with nothing and then something so beautiful can come alive.
There's this thing I've been thinking about and relating to gardening, which is the concept of weeds.
Yep.
I don't believe in weeds. I don't think who gets to choose what's a weed and what isn't a weed?
What's the saying? Isn't a weed just like a misplaced plant?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, excuse me, this thing's capturing carbon.
Yeah.
It's creating oxygen. It's fertilizing the soil. Like it's maintaining moisture. Like why? So you just don't like the way it looks? Or you said, no, this earth only sprouts this kind of plant.
But isn't that the point of gardening though? It's like you are planting specific types of plant to grow in this specific type of place. So anything unwanted, out of place might be considered a weed.
I'm a chaos gardener. So I just kind of throw it in and hope for the best. And this year I have on the side of my house a very chaotic garden that has a lot of pokeweed in it. And I made...
My dad almost died eating that.
Oh, really?
Straight up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. I won't eat
subject.
it.
Yeah. It was like, it really like, anyway, for those who don't know, poke is this thing in the South. They call it poke salad, right? And isn't it the same as sumac? Isn't it the same plant?
Okay, well, there is such a thing as poison sumac, but I actually just learned from Jake Miller the other day that we don't even have much of that in Oklahoma.
Interesting.
Well, I just learned about sumac because of Country Bird Bakery. The sumac knot is great. It hasn't killed me yet.
It's everywhere in Oklahoma. Like if you drive anywhere down the highway, you'll see just acres and acres of it. And the folks at Heirloom are doing a whole sumac dinner with like sumac coffee, sumac beer, sumac dishes from Dante's, and then also from Old Dog. They're doing like an ode to sumac.
That's cool.
You're like probably like one of the biggest like food people that I know. Like you are like
I love to eat.
You're kind of like the food, like you were like doing food journalism in New York. Like so obviously you grew up in you grew up in Tulsa. You're, followed your dreams to New York, like worked for New York Times, worked for Delish. Like those like those actually was like some of the first viral videos of like make this crazy like s'mores sundae or whatever.
Remember the hands and pans videos?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was doing those.
She got to be the hands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
It was a really wild time. A lot of pressure.
Wow. And then like when you moved back, like we reconnected when you moved back, and you were like, which I think this is like a good approach to take. Like any community is like, what am I interested in that's not here yet? And you were like very clear when you moved back of like we have all this food, but like there's no real food festival, in our community. And like you were just like really passionate about like kind of bringing the food community together. And like that kind of feels like a through line, even like you're writing for Eater now and doing a lot of things like that. So
yeah, I mean, I think I have always been drawn to writing about food and connecting over food. I think it's a really fantastic way to explore identity and place and community. And I mean, it goes back so far. People would commune around a table. Breaking bread was the way to be together and get to know each other. And I think it's still very relevant, especially in a city like Tulsa. So yeah, I mean, I find a lot of value and joy in exploring the world through that lens. Food of a place, what are our preferences? What are the foods that are grown here? And, how do we tell stories about who we are through that?
I read your article about throwing your first dinner party in your 20s.
Wait, what? That's an old one, right?
I was doing my research and going through your like website.
Oh my God, that would have been like for Hello Giggles or for Bustle, maybe. Or Refinery. Yeah, like I think I was probably like 25 when I wrote that.
Okay, wow.
Or
so just 24. A year ago. Right?
Yeah, just a year ago. No, like 10, 12 years ago.
So I'm curious to know like what your... I do a lot of like social sculpture is what we call it, right? Which is like the art of gathering and getting people to engage with each other, and the parameters in which you set determine how people respond. So something like a dinner party is very different than like, come over and let's eat. Like a cookout is way different than a dinner party, right? Like you dress up, you have dishes, you prepare, you set the table and make sure the fork's on the right side and all that kind of stuff. And I think about these kinds of things all the time, like of all these little rituals and etiquette and how that causes our psyche to then respond. And then, of course, the food itself that you're eating, the time it takes to make it, where the ingredients are. And as you're talking about storytelling, so much of that is just inherent. And you also said it goes way back. It's like the most ancient thing.
Well, you said the word. I mean, ritual is a huge part of why I enjoy those kinds of things and why I enjoy hosting. Hosting is another one of my favorite current parts of my spiritual or creative practice, I guess. But yeah, there's a book called The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. I don't know if you guys have, I think it's Priya Parker. And it's just fascinating, as someone who really loves hosting and loves to bring people together, and who, like you, is really interested in what can happen when you get this specific confluence of people around a table. I found her book really enlightening, and it gave me a ton of perspective. Like there's a line in there. I think she says, a category is not a reason. So like, actually you brought up the food festival that I started, and we struggled with that in the second year as we were really trying to figure out what it was trying to be. It's like, you can't just have a food festival to have one. You have to think about like, well, why? Like, what are we trying to do? Who are we trying to celebrate? Or what is the desired outcome?
Or it's like, we talk about, I think all of us talk about a lot. It's like, you have to have an intention to do anything.
Absolutely.
And if you don't know what your intention is, then like, it's going to just feel kind of hollow and shallow, right? And it's like, starting with an intention is a great kind of compass for anything that you're doing. You have to know why you're doing it.
Yep.
And then, make sure that like that through line is staying consistent.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if I look at a lot of my work, professional, spiritual, creative, whatever it is, that is sort of the nut of all of it. And, the through line in the marketing and strategy world, it's like the brief, like what's the essence of the thing we're trying to capture, or like what is the insight that we are playing with? And then, in a story, it's what's the angle, like what are we trying to explore? For a dinner party, like what is the theme, or why are we here? Like what are we like trying to pay reverence to in this moment? And I think that for me is really tethered to like the sense of ritual, and why it's important to take time to intentionally observe and celebrate things.
Something I think about on that with food in particular, as our society, and this even goes back to gardening, right? As we have industrialized, we've lost the literal connection to our food. And especially if you eat animal products, I'm a big believer that you should partake in the death of the animal. I think that like there's a cost that comes there, and like the shedding of blood, there's all kinds of ritual. Every mythology, blood is the sacred thing, because it's something you can't spill willy-nilly. If you slay your calf, right, it can't become the heifer that then creates milk. And so you're hyper aware of the cost of everything. Every plant that you plant, will become food. And it's this delicate thing, that your life is carefully held in, like nature holds onto you. So food is the life force. It's what keeps us alive in a very literal way. So you see this, all the ritualized of prayer or sacrifice or sanctifying or consecrating the whatever it is, or blessing the thing, which then leads to like why in every culture, the thing that people sacrifice is always the most prized food, usually animal. And we've lost that tradition, and now you can just like buy it butchered, and it's already the blood's already been drained, and you just throw it on your plate with disregard, and it's like, oh yeah, it's made for me. It's just there, and it comes in a can or a sausage, and yum, 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 and you just consume it. And I feel like that to me feels like such a disgrace. I don't know the word. It feels so, but it's the same thing with plants. It's like these things are keeping your atmosphere and you're literally keeping you alive. And that's why in like all these ancient cultures, you see this worship of the animal and worship of the plants and worship of the medicine, because there's this awareness, this tether to it that industrialization has lost. And the closest thing we have left is like these old practices of like sitting around and like carving the turkey and a prayer or whatever. But it's like it pales in comparison to the way that we used to be. And I think that we would be better off as a society if we were to kind of bring back this kind of the awareness and have the appreciation and the sanctity of everything that comes on your plate and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that broadly speaking, most of our culture is pretty starved for ritual. I don't know that we maybe would say it like that or see it like that, but I think it's probably a reason why we find ourselves, going to things like a yoga class or a run club, or like why a lot of people go to church despite not being
or
religious.
On a Saturday morning.
To the parlor. We like the intentionality of a container, and we like what can happen inside of it when we are with people who want to participate in that fully. And I mean, I think, it's just really fascinating to see how certain rituals have started to feel outdated for folks our age, but how there is also this very present hunger for more of it.
Yeah. I think something that I've seen you guys both do really well in events and that I try to do is just kind of like, they're like the ritual of just gathering people and then saying like, okay, this is what this is for. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, it's kind of like a magical practice, if you want to think of it that way, to kind of like, you get people in the room. Like I've seen you do this, Trueson, like literally like at the soiree, like, and on some level, like they know why they're here. It's a party, they want to connect, but it's like, there is this like extra thing that happens when you like get everyone together and you say the words, we are here because we need to connect. We are here because this is a ritual that sort of like solidifies the impact of the thing. And there is something about like, not just doing the thing, but then saying out loud what you are doing that just like really like makes it true, right?
Yeah, I think it's permissive in a way too. Like when you set a norm or just name the intention of a thing, I think it makes it easier for people to kind of give themselves over to it and try it on personally.
Yeah, I think one of the things that like modernism, that's great about modernism is that we dismantled all these constructs that in many ways were used as tools of oppression for people. And I think that's like the best aspect of modernism. But as we're kind of now entering about 100 years, a little over 100 years of modernism, I think we're starting to see, as we've lost the value of making things, like we've industrialized the making. So now there's no people, the perceived value in what it costs to make is less important to us as much as what is it. So it's like, oh, I like this thing because of the way it looks or the brand or like the culture, but there's a lack of awareness of like the humanity that was tied to the objects where everything was handmade, and the further with like food and how that's even in a process of ritual, which then creates culture, which then creates identity. It's this big, this is a thing I'm really into, is like this big complicated thing of like how we define who we are. And so much of that is the context of everything else around us and the way we interact with that. And that's an interesting art practice to play with, is how do you think about, I think all that to say, in a modernist society now, I think it hits way harder now because we're so starved for it. So that's why people love going to like, fine dining, right? And it's like this thing where it's expensive. And because it's expensive, you approach it differently. Like if it was like, oh, it's free, come on in, you wouldn't have the same experience as if you're like, okay, we're going to save up all year and we're going to put away money right? You're telling yourself, this is important. This is more important than buying that new pair of shoes or getting an extra coffee or going to that vacation or that cruise. I'm not doing those. Instead, I'm going to have a moment where I sit down at this dinner and there's a chef and like the whole thing, right? That primes you to then really taste every morsel. And
it's also interesting to to think about the fact that like fine dining, like as we know it, is like really new. You know what I mean? Like on one level, yes, like gathering for a meal is like the oldest thing ever, but like this whole thing of like food is art and chefs that are like, I'm going to tell you a story about my life based on like the way I prepared this steak. And then, and then I moved to Costa Rica. So now there's a plantain on the plate, it's like, I feel like we are like, we've moved like in our lifetime even, or maybe our parents' lifetime into a space where it's like from like being a chef as just like a craft or a service and like really like leaning into it being
like an expression,
an expression of self and an art. And like,
I totally agree. I mean, I think that's part of why I love it so much. And I mean, like, I shouldn't be going out to fancy dinners all the time. I can't do that like some people can, but I do it and I love it. And I think I love it because it's like the dish is a map in a lot of ways of like an idea or a concept that they had in their head that they envisioned and then figured out how to bring to life in a way that works really well and feels super orchestrated. And yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that people have struggled to see as art as immediately as something like painting or sculpture because it goes away. It's only there for such a short amount of time. But it is.
It's also like a really like, it's a really cool way to experience like other cultures and like other countries. Like, and you can see the similarities. Like I was just talking to someone yesterday about like the idea of like meat or cheese or vegetables like wrapped in bread. It's like, here it's an empanada.
Yeah.
Here it's, it's a quesadilla. Like here it's
a sandwich.
Yeah, it's a sandwich.
Kolache.
Yeah, or kolache. It's
yeah.
like fundamentally it's like the same thing, but like the flavors are different and like the preparation is different. But yeah.
And the interpretation is different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think I'm curious to know when you go to fine dining experiences. I'm calling it fine dining, but like artistic. Let's just say food that you're going to experience not just because you're hungry, but because you want to like engage something within you that whoever made that meal made, right? When you approach that as a writer, I know you've written a lot about that, and I'm sure tasted many other plates, and with that kind of critical mind of like, as what are the things you look for when you go experience that kind of stuff?
I mean, I think the first thing I would say is I would recategorize it from fine dining to just like intentional food because it doesn't need to be fine to be really moving. That's the first thing I would say. Like I did a story recently about a bakery that we have here called Country Bird Bakery, which I mean,
James Beard winner this year.
James Beard winner for best pastry chef or bakery, and that's like in all of the country. So that's a huge honor. It was the first time any restaurant from Tulsa had won. So it's a big moment for the city. And Country Bird Bakery is a small batch artisanal bakery here. It's only been around for like 2 years or less.
They're open one day. Are they 2 days now?
They're 2 days.
Okay.
It's always Saturday, and I think maybe every other Thursday. But so they keep their availability intentionally limited. They have a very small shop, just really small workspace. They're doing everything by hand. And a lot of what they make, it uses, ingredients bought at the farmer's market or grown in the garden. It's Oklahoma grown flour and, milled wheat and all of that. It's all sourdough. It's just it's a very intensive process to do what they do. And it's phenomenal. Everything is so delicious, but that's not even the best part of it. The best part of it is that they're baking with the terroir of the heartland, and they really are using those elements to reflect a story about where they are. in the world.
And this is like wheat country.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a lot. Like my favorite item there is the farmer's Danish, and I think Kat described it as an edible substrate because you can just see everything inside of it. You can see exactly what they got at the market, and it's so good.
But it's also like, I think like a lot of great art is like you can enjoy it on a number of levels, right? Like if you watch like the film Goodfellas, like you can watch that film and know nothing about film and like the technique or anything and still just be like, man, I loved it. It was great. So it's like, I love like, to me, like really good food is like, you shouldn't have to like think about it.
It's kind of an equalizer.
Yeah. It's like, and obviously like if you know Kat and you know the story and like, you can go deep and be like, oh, the story of the Danish. But like someone can just walk in and be like, oh, let me try the Danish and be like, oh, it's really good. I liked it, And there's nothing like wrong with that. Like, and I think like ideally art is something that can be appreciated on a number of levels. There's like the very surface level of enjoyment, and then, the greatest works of art is like, you can keep peeling back the layers and like learn more and more about it.
Yeah, and more about yourself too, which I think, if just to use and finish with that example, it's people who come in there and take the time to think of and learn about what they're eating are also going to learn about what it means to be from here, what it means to cook things from here or bake things from here.
Well, then she's like, and then like maybe get inspired to like make your own bread or like, adopt some of the practice and integrate it into your own life.
Totally.
And I think I used to go once the line now has become so long.
It's actually, I went last Saturday. It's not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah.
It's calmed down.
Okay. They introduced online ordering. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I can't wait for that because the monkey bread was like, that's what how I sustained myself. And,
my diet is monkey bread.
Yeah. It's amazing. So I'm curious to go back to gardening. You're saying that you're very inspired about gardening. And obviously that dovetails into food. Is there like, as you've been going, you said you're on year 3 now.
Yeah.
What are things that how do you think differently about food and yourself post digging in the dirt and getting it under your nails?
I would say that when I harvest something from my garden, I feel a really strong imperative to use it or give it away. So I guess it sort of goes back to what you were saying about just having respect for the process. I poured all this time into creating the conditions where this can grow, and I'm taking it off the vine, so I want to use it. I'm taking it out of its natural element. And not to say that these plants have feelings, but they have a place.
I mean, they're conscious.
Yeah. We don't know.
We don't know. Maybe.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, they're conscious, at least in the sense that their leaves tilt toward the sun, their roots pursue water. Like, they're aware as a biological system to keep themselves alive.
Yeah.
They know to, like, put their flowers out right as the insects that pollinate them need. Like, they're aware in the sense that they know not to push their roots where it's dry. Right? Like, they release all kinds of chemical signals within themselves and externally that signal other plants when they're being eaten by pests. So they're not just inert. It's not like a wooden chair or something.
Yeah, and I definitely think of them as my little babies.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about gardening. I'm not at all very good at it. I'm kind of going at it this year for the first time. My wife, Zia, grew up, her mom would have this massive garden. And when I first moved to Oklahoma, we lived there and I would work in the garden and realized like how laborious it was, and was just like, guys, this isn't worth it at first. I'm like, it would be way more efficient for us to just spend this time that we're putting into the ground, working a job and just buy it from the grocery store.
Sure.
But then I started to realize like, oh, like the difference, right? Of like the appreciation, and that labor, that sweat equity that you put into, and watching your crop just die from like an overload of a certain pest that just devours it, or a drought in, Oklahoma, we have super hot, dry summers, and you just like pray that for rain. And I remember the first time we had a big rain after this really dry summer, it was like everybody, this is up in Turley, which is like more country. Everybody got out of their house and you could literally hear people cheering around, like, because it was raining, and it was just this magical moment. And that really, I grew up in like a very urban, as a kid in Virginia. So coming to like Yeehaw, Oklahoma was kind of like a culture shock. But getting into the dirt and anyway, we grew our own wheat from scratch one year. And it was so much work to harvest and then winnow, I think it's what it's called, like where you separate it and then you have to like grind the grain. And it was like, who knows how many hours of labor before we finally got a piece of bread. But I got to say, that is the best bread that I've ever had, was the bread that I planted. I plowed that soil, put those seeds in that ground, protected over it until it grew, watched it die, harvested it, did the whole thing, like separating the wheat berries from the chaff and the whole thing. It was just like a totally different, it's like spiritual thing at that point. Like it becomes like you have this connection, an appreciation, a sense of pride that I think industrialism has, like, though it's now food is abundant, right? But we've lost I don't know. How do you feel about like that kind of going back to ritual, the sanctity? Are there other things besides just food that you think about in that way?
Certainly. I mean, I think reverence for the process is something that I try to take very seriously kind of throughout my life or throughout, my work or my spiritual practices or whatever. I mean, I think a lot about running. Chris, you both know I'm a runner. I love to run. Didn't grow up as a runner. I got into it later in life. And somewhere along the way, I got into this bad habit of signing up for events and not training for them, and then just showing up and struggling through and finishing them for the sake of finishing them, but not really absorbing the entirety of the process. And that's a bad habit. The first marathon that I did in a much different way, and I think whenever you're training for something like a marathon where the training is months long and you're waking up at like 4:30 on a Saturday and going to run, 18 miles or whatever it is, by the time you go run the race, you've already done all the work, because the work of the marathon is everything that you do that gets you there, and such that you can just go and enjoy what I believe is a spiritual practice of running the race. And I mean, that reverence for process, that reverence for work hits me deeply. I mean, when you do get to the road and you run the miles, you're running your own race. Like, the race is long, but it's only with yourself. And so you have the ability to pull over and see your friends or do what you need to do. But
I love so we both love Richard Rohr.
Oh yeah, deeply.
And one of my favorite Richard Rohr quotes is, "How you do anything is how you do everything."
I was just going to say that, because I love when you say that, because it's been on my mind for about 2 months.
Yeah.
I think about it every single day.
So it's like, it's really potent and powerful, because like, you can, if you apply that to your life and you can notice like, okay, something as small as like, oh man, I signed up for this marathon last minute and now I'm scrambling and then I'm going to finish and I'm not going to do as good as, if you're like humble, you can be like, shit, like what else in my life am I
cheating on?
Am I like signing up late and like not really trying? And it's
not bringing my whole self. And what it really is, I actually discovered this recently. But it's like, I'm not surrendering to the process, or I'm not surrendering into the full experience.
Well, because we want to like, there's a very human tendency to want to like skip over the hard part.
Mm-hmm.
This came up in
preaching to the choir.
And it's like with love, it's like, you don't want to run a marathon. You want to have run a marathon.
I know.
Like you want the accomplishment. And it's like, again, like that. I'm not saying that from a place of judgment. I'm saying that from a place of like, we all do that in different areas of our lives, where like, you can look at like the way that you approach like brushing your teeth, or the way that you approach like, your relationships. And you can look at like your behavior. If you can kind of step outside of yourself, you can look at the way that you approach like any given task, and sort of like notice your patterns and notice your behaviors. And then you can kind of like use that example of like the marathon to then like correct, patterns that where that shows up in other areas of your life.
Absolutely. And I mean, I would say that when I am in stress or chaos, I start kind of like checking the box, or like wanting to skip the process. But when I'm in health, when I feel really centered, or like, frankly, like when I'm really struggling, that is when I tend to give myself over fully to the process. And so, like, for instance, right now I'm training for the New York City Marathon, and I am so excited. It's been a dream for a long time. And I started my training like a month early because I wanted to really be able to enjoy the process and like not get myself into that position where I had to rush through any of it. And, I did 10 miles yesterday, and it was such a gift. We had a beautiful day. The weather was great.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And I felt the difference of my training, the weather, my training, my mindset, just enjoying the 10 miles. It was very hard, but I did it, and it was sort of that bit of encouragement I needed to know that, like, you've done the right thing. You're on the right path. You're going to do this.
I think like with that kind of topic, the role of technology is to reduce labor. It's to make it easier. So think about the very first technology, fire, right? It allows us to see in the dark. It allows us to eat food we normally couldn't eat. It allows us to process things and create metals and all these other tools that then speed up the time it would normally take to plow a field. Oh, forget plowing a field. You're hunting and you're gathering. But then we're like, oh, that's too much work. Let's do it so that we don't have to go find the deer. We're going to corral them and we're going to breed them, and then we just have as much as we want, and then we don't have to work anymore. And that leads us to a point where like AI does the thinking for you and writes for you, and like soon, currently people have their own AI agents that are talking to other companies, but they're actually talking to other agents.
I know.
And it's like the machines are doing the whole thing now. And I can't remember which short story it is. There's like a science fiction short story where people start replacing themselves with like a robot copy of them to like fill their role, and like they are trying to see if they can like get away with like having their I think it was like this husband has gets his own robot to replace his role so that he can like get away and go fish, and his wife could then like spend time with his robot. But what he ends up learning at the end is that his wife has been a robot the whole time because she did it before him. And it's like, we're going that we that's where we're going, where we don't want to do work. We don't want to have to like do it the hard way. We want to have ran a marathon. We don't want to run a marathon, because to run a marathon is to wake up at 4 a.m. and like sweat and,
Yeah.
I think though that like sometimes like you learn what you want by like learning what you don't want. So I think that like what you're describing, like my optimistic hope for AI is that like it actually, so we automate everything, and then it's like, okay, you don't have to do anything. And then that makes you realize like, oh, I actually do like doing this task or doing that task. So it's like, but like when you have to do those tasks, then it feels like a burden. But it's like, so again, like the optimistic outcome would be that like the machines teach us what actually it is to be human, and like what are the things that like can't be replaced, and what are the things that we like want to do. And then we can have a world where like we're putting all of our energy into doing the things that we want to do. Because I think like anybody, like even when you look at like I always look at like the super wealthy people that like are like politicians or whatever. I'm just like, why don't you just retire? Like what? Like you did it. You made $1 billion. Like what are you still doing? And it's because like we as humans like want to do things in the world. We want to make impact. We want to create things. We want to like, sometimes that's ego driven, like in the case of the politicians. Sometimes it's like self-expression based, like in the case of the artist. But at the end of the day, it's like we don't actually want to sit around and do nothing. If you've ever had the gift of like, having a month off where like you're, set on money, like after a couple of weeks, you're like, okay, like I want to do things, like the impulse, the human impulse is actually to like create and to have activities and to have, different types of things that we're like, we like to build things.
I think that's what we're finding is like it seems very ironic to me when I go to the gym every morning and I'm in there doing all this hard work. And I'm like, I could be fixing my house. I could be carrying shingles up a ladder. I could be, like fixing that drain that needs, like I could be burning these calories in a way that's like productive. But I know that aside from that, I have to move my body. I have to do this physical work in order for it to stay functional, for my brain and my mental health to work. And I have to go outside and get sun rays, like all the stuff that we evolved to survive, which is like walking and running and, digging in the dirt and like all of those things. We're now having to like find ways to fit them back into our life. They used to be necessary. And now we're having to like, oh shoot, if I eat too much, now I'm having health problems. So I got to like try to eat less. And it's like, to me, there's something about it that feels kind of absurd. And maybe I'm just currently on a kick where I'm like rejecting modernism, as I'm like, well, maybe modernism sucks. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it's partially like we choose our hard. Someone who retires, you think they're going to have it so easy because I don't have to go to a job anymore. But there's also a hardness in retirement where it's like, well, how do I feel useful anymore? Or who am I now that I don't have the container of this job to sort of order my activity? I think it forces us to pick another kind of hard work, which is like the work of reinvention or reclaiming who you are.
I think that's a great segue into, I want to talk more about like your spiritual work. Like, I know you went through like a spiritual direction, like certification, and you have a lot of different ways that like you like to work with people. But I'm curious, like, if you want to just like talk about the role that has in your life, and like maybe even like how do you define spirituality? Like, I think that's like such like a lot of us grew up in religion. I grew up in like, United Methodist, conservative Christian kind of world. Trueson grew up Unification Church. So I'm curious, and I think like, obviously like your spirituality evolves as you go through life, but like, what does that look like for you, and how do you define the term? And
Absolutely. It's my spirituality and spiritual practice is, it is at once the most constant thing about me, and also something that has changed so significantly over the course of my life, and always, I think, will continue to do so. I grew up in the Episcopal Church. I was baptized as a baby in a very churchy family, and probably like a pretty religious family as well, but churchy more so than religious, because the messaging around church in our family was that this is our community and this is where we are going to invest our time and our talent and our treasure, less about religion as a weapon or anything like that. The Episcopal faith tradition is pretty progressive, and I think it gets a lot of things right. It doesn't waste a ton of time on teeing up belief as a threat, or like a lack of belief as a threat. So that was always really freeing to me. And I grew up going to summer camp for church camp. It was a pretty chill, progressive church camp, kind of a mom and pop place, very open and affirming, very inclusive. And that experience really fostered my core values in me that I still hold on to today, of joy, community, wholeheartedness, belonging. Those are so central to how I try to live my life. And as I got older, I had a lot of desire to enter the priesthood. In the Episcopal tradition, we ordain women and queer people, and have for a long time. So that was an option for me. And I did a year of discernment after college in the Episcopal Service Corps to kind of go try that on. And I think that was a really transformative year for me. And a lot changed for me in that time. But one of the things that became clear was I have a desire to be in some kind of ministry, but not in that way. And as I got deeper into my 20s, I would say that my perspective on the world changed, my theology changed, my personal spiritual practices changed, and I was away from organized religion and most any spiritual practice for the better part of like 5 or 6 or 7 years. But like many people, I think the pandemic was a real wake-up call for me. The intense isolation I felt during that time awakened this deep longing for meaning and for community and just to reconnect. And so I started to do that. I started to reconvene with folks in spiritual friendship, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but like it goes back to that intentionality. When you're getting together with people around a shared desire to connect over something sacred, I think the relationships deepen. And I started seeing my spiritual director during that time, and it was just hugely meaningful. And through that process, my own desire to offer spiritual direction sort of emerged. And I wasn't super familiar with it until that time. And I had a lot of struggle, I would say, around accepting that as a call, like as a vocational call, because, I've always had this voice that would say, like, who are you to do that? Or that's for someone else. That's for a priest, or that's for someone smarter than you, or holier than you, or kinder than you, or more pious than you. All of these things. Like I was my harshest critic anytime I thought about it, and so much so that like the desire would get snuffed out. But ultimately, I decided to say yes to that and went to a training program called the Hayden Institute. It was like a 2.5-year program that I did while I was also working, like in my corporate job and then running my business. And even while I was doing the program, I didn't think I would offer spiritual direction. I was like, this is just going to help me in my life on my journey. And over time, I think I've gotten better at talking back to the voice that says, like, who are you to do this? And it's taken actually offering it to people and sitting with them and companioning them in that space to affirm for myself that this is a love and a joy and a gift that I have. And so I still struggle with how to merge my vocational and professional lives.
I don't want to like steer you off course, but that to me is a very interesting topic of like,
sure,
how do we merge the professional and the vocational?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lifelong quest. For me, I kind of feel like there's sort of like two wolves inside me, like there's the wolf that wants to be giving of herself to the world in a healing capacity and, seeking understanding and depth and self-actualization and helping people find peace and helping them, experience creative embodiment and just, self-actualize. And I have such a hard or strong desire to do that work. There's also this part of me that's extremely ambitious, and is very thinky and loves to crack problems or challenges or figure out how something can come to life, and who wants to make creative things and, and who enjoys money and like who enjoys living comfortably. And so
fine dining.
And so it's always been a challenge for me to think about how to integrate those. But I think the closest I've gotten so far is recognizing that my professional work as a strategist and a writer and my vocational work as a spiritual director are actually very similar, because in both instances, we are listening for what wants to come forth, and we are helping someone or something claim the identity and the story that they want to share with the world. Whether you're brand planning, creating a new product, coming up with a name for something, or setting the creative constraints for what an activation or a campaign is going to be and say, or whether you are sitting with someone who's saying to you, I don't know, I don't recognize myself, I don't know where I want to go, I feel midair and I don't know what my story is. Both require sort of listening underneath and helping what wants to come forth.
It's interesting. I was thinking about, I wasn't expecting you to say it that way. Like my thought, because, my experience of trying to bring those two together was that I feel that for many of us, there's a tension between the professional world and the vocational world, because the professional world often doesn't really jive with whatever your vocation tends to be.
Sure.
And there's this concern of like, well, if I'm too open about that or too like forward about, my spiritual beliefs or lack thereof, or in my case, some, performance art that might upset some people, then I'll never be let back into that professional door again.
Absolutely. I did feel some of that, I will say, when I was working for the New York Times. I think a lot of it was my own projection. I saw the Times as this huge legacy institution. It's been around for over 170 years. It's got literally some of the smartest people on the planet running it and inside its doors every day. And I kind of had this feeling of like, how did I get here? But and because of that, I was a little bit afraid to sort of fully show up with those parts of myself, at least at the beginning.
You're familiar with the term masking?
Yeah.
Right? Like I think that was what pushed me away from the professional world, was that like I'm an unusual person. I've learned that like I'm neurodivergent. And as I've kind of like figured out what that is and how it fits in my life, looking back, it's like, man, it was really hard for me to show up to work, like literally to like not just like be at the place, but to actually do the work was difficult because I was so like caught up in masking that even the way I worked, I'm dyslexic, super ADHD, and probably on the autism spectrum as well. I haven't been evaluated, but I'm like, whenever I read it, I'm like, that sounds like me. So it was very concerning. I was always worried about like the way I write, and like I've always had like spelling errors and everything. So I would avoid situations that required those things because I was worried of like they'll figure it out, and how do I explain? And then ask, a lot of job applications, do you have a disability? And I would like sit there and be like, I really fucking do, but I don't want to check this box because then they may not hire me. Like that was my fear of like, how do I?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a real fear and reality around like, can someone see me past my symptoms, or can someone see me past my quirks?
Or can someone see me? Like
or can anyone see me? No, trust me.
I mean, it's like, it's a real thing. It's like, we're talking about like letting yourself be seen and like perceived. We talked about that on another episode, but it's a real thing. I think like you're also hitting on, I mean, first of all, like in a lot of cases, like the two types of work are not mutually exclusive. Like, you can, work on brand strategy today and then like kind of follow, if you get more interested in spiritual direction, you can follow that path.
Yeah.
And like, you are free to like switch back and forth or do them at the same time or integrate them. But there is something about like, like what I would call like soul work.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like this weird thing where like your deepest longing that feels like your soul is like weirdly like the scariest thing. And sometimes that fear shows up like what you're saying, where it's like, oh, I couldn't do that. Like I could never be the one that, did something like that. That's for the other people to do. And it's like part of your work is like leveling up to the point where you can actually embrace your own calling.
Yeah.
And like we talked about this on another episode, but it's like, I've had a tendency in the past to like, do big ambitious things that are like not that scary to me. And it's like to other people, it's like, wow, like, big project, whatever. But then it's like, I know that I'm like, there's like a deeper calling that like I haven't been ready to say yes to yet. And it's like, I actually think that is like kind of the journey of life, though. It's like and especially with something like spiritual direction, it's like, sorry, I don't want a 21-year-old spiritual director. Like I want someone that has like lived life and figured it out and made mistakes and then like has kind of arrived at a point where they have wisdom to share with people.
Well, to be certain, that is part of what I think holds me back too, is like, oh, I still have so much of my own work to do and that I've been avoiding. And I think in particular, this year specifically, you both know I lost my dad in October, and the complete disorientation that came with living through that grief made me feel like there's no way I could companion someone from this place. However, as I've worked with my grief and as I've spent more time with it, and I say that in that way very intentionally, because it does feel like a thing about me and that's on me and that's going to be with me forever, that's going to change. But as I've worked with it, it has really revealed to me, like, a big part of the work that I feel like I'm meant to do is to help other people who are trying to make sense of their life and grief. And but I've been afraid to do that.
Yeah.
Afraid of like what that will ask of me, and if I can hold space for them.
I think sometimes too, it's like when you think about like it's I forget who, maybe like Marianne Robinson, but it's like we're actually afraid of our light more than our darkness. Like we're actually more afraid to show up and be great and so like we play small because like that feels safer, because like the reality is that like ascending to your like best, to your highest possible expression for your life is actually going to like in some ways like mean like the death of an old version of yourself. And your ego will always resist death, even if it's like in service to you and it's making you a better person. It's just like, like a small example for me is like I don't play video games as much as I used to. It's like there's like a kid, there's like a young version of me. They got a lot of value off of like playing video games, and like to level up, I've had to like let go of that part of my life. And it's like, you want to like, you don't want to say goodbye to those old versions of yourself, but especially like I think when you get to this stage of like your 30s or your 40s where you're starting to like actually tap into like, who am I? What is my work in the world? Like, who do I want to be? And you want to like say yes to like your ultimate vision for like the grandness of your life. It's like that is going to require you to like step into something that your family doesn't recognize, that you yourself doesn't recognize. You're going to lose friends. You're going to like change the way that you spend your time, and you're going to like literally redefine who you are. And like that is a kind of death, and you have to like grieve the old versions of yourself that you're letting go of.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And I think the reality is transformation always asks something of you. And there are things you have to let go of to get there. And that is deeply uncomfortable and often, full of grief. Like I remember, you'll find this interesting. When I came out, my spiritual practice and my relationship with God got much deeper, and it felt like it finally sort of made sense. And I think it was because I had spent so much time kind of ignoring or denying what I was actually being called to. And it took, getting courageous enough to lean into that and to be willing to risk something for that, like risk my relationship with my family or some friends or, other people I'd loved in the past who didn't know me that way, having to be courageous enough to say, I'm going to step in to my highest self and I'm going to step into everything that I'm being called into, made me love myself a lot more. It made me feel more connected to the Spirit. It made me understand the Trinity in new ways. Like and it's kind of interesting because I don't really identify as a Christian anymore, but like that story of transformation is just so like essential to me and has a lot of meaning.
Yeah, I think it's no coincidence that the story, at least of the ultimate sacrifice, right? In the Christian, I say mythology, and I don't mean this to offend Christians, but as in these big, powerful stories that involve mysticism and the fantastical and miracles. I love to look at religion, of all the different kinds of religion, from a Joseph Campbell lens. Chris brought me onto him, and it's this kind of psychoanalytical approach to it. And he has to die in the most terrible, horrific, painful way, in a way that was also humiliating, in order for him to then resurrect. And the resurrection doesn't happen during the crucifixion, right? It's after he's brought down, and then he's put into, just tilt it a little bit. Yeah. Then he's put into the tomb, and then he gets out, right? So there's also this kind of like, I think about that whenever I'm going through transitions of like, okay, I have to not only suffer in a horrific way, but also be humiliated. And I think that's a thing that's like worse than death is humiliation. And then before you get the magnificent, I'm back and I've like ascended to heaven and trumpets, you have to be in the tomb.
Exactly.
Right? Isolated. No one's there to be with you. Nobody else comes in the tomb with you. You're by yourself.
You have the 10 of Swords. You're fully resigned. And that's true. And I think, one thing that I like to think about is we live our lives by resurrection. Like that is the rhythm of our lives. It's true of gardening. It's,
it's the pattern of nature.
Mm-hmm. It's present in so much mythology. But it's also a hope, it's essential. If you're going to hope for transformation, you have to be willing to fully surrender to what it asks of you.
Yeah, totally. I've been struggling with the humiliation part of that transformation. That's a thing that's like, because like you said, when you come out, you're worried of like, oh shit, people are going to judge me. They're going to it's not just the loss. It's also like, oh, this is going to be a hard conversation. There's going to be people that are going to question my authenticity of like, have you been lying this whole time? And it's like, it's humiliating to have to like come clean about something in not in a way that's like, I say humiliating, but I don't, maybe there's a better word. But
there's actually, so I love Carl Jung, and like there's a Carl Jung quote, paraphrasing, where he says, to become who you are, you're going to have to go through hell. And by the way, it's your own specific personal hell.
Yeah.
It's like
so true.
You are going to have to like have,
God.
Unfortunately, this is like part of like the soul journey is like at some point, like the last thing that you want to have happen happens to you. For a lot of people, it's like losing a job that you had, attached your identity to, or like having a public, challenge to your reputation, or like, who you thought was your soulmate leaves you. And it's like, but that's like the weird, like alchemy of transformation is like, that is how you actually get to the version of yourself that you're destined to become.
Yeah. I can kind of currently I'm going through a transitional period within my spirituality. For the longest time, I identified as an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I was like very much a religious zealot of the Unificationist Church.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm kind of calling myself that I'm in the process of deconstructing my atheism because I'm deeply entrenched in spiritual practices. I go to the Boston Avenue Methodist Church just about every Sunday. However, the way I kind of like look at myself is it's like, well, I love the organ and I love the ritual and I love like they light the candles and, I like, there's all these things. It's a beautiful building. And like, I don't have to really believe in God to still like participate. And I think a lot of my resistance to being like, yeah, I am spiritual and say that because I still don't even like using those words personally is that there's this part of me that's like, yeah, man, it's really embarrassing to have to be like, yeah, so all this time where I was like, when you die, nothing happens. There's no God. It's just a delusion.
Well,
like, I'm going to have to like
that's
face
the
that.
letting go of the old version of yourself. Like, I think like what I've observed in you is that you are in the process of like telling yourself a new story and you are integrating new beliefs and you are figuring out like what to let go of. And it's like, you're in the tension where you're like, formulating a new belief system for yourself, but like you have this sort of loyalty to like these other versions of yourself that said this. I mean, like if you watch season 1 of the channel, like Trueson was in a different place with spirituality. And it's been really cool as your friend to watch you kind of like embrace, because even like the Martha Graham quote that this show is sort of like built around is like, that is a deeply spiritual quote. Like you're talking about like the forces that animate and inspire you, and like, the thing that is like your unique gift to offer the world. Like that is a spiritual practice. And I think that for people that have religious trauma, it's like really hard to, rescue the baby from the bathwater, so to speak, to kind of like find the morsels of good and like sort of like recreate. Like a lot of people that I know that are spiritual are sort of like in the process of like piecing together their own spiritual framework. They're like, practicing like Eastern traditions like meditation and yoga, and they're still going to church, and like they're sort of Christian mystics, but then, they're reading the Bhagavad Gita, and they're just, tapping into like new age spirituality or like old, occult mysticism. And it's like kind of just like taking the jewels and the gems from like each of these things and kind of creating your own, framework that works for you. And like that is spirituality. And I think like the biggest like challenge with religion is like we're using words to talk about things that like are beyond words. And so we have all this confusion that gets created by like, I'm saying, like even like, atheist and agnostic, like a lot of times people are using one person saying I'm an atheist, the other one saying I'm agnostic, and the other one saying I'm spiritual but not religious. And really they have the same belief system, but they're just using different words. And so we misunderstand each other by, word choice,
the semantics. Yeah. Well, I think this came up in therapy because everything you've said, Chris, is like literally what my therapist has been saying like over and over again as I've been working through my stuff. And it came up to me, I'm like, the thing I'm most resistant about, the whole like claiming that I'm spiritual or that I have something about me that enjoys that, is all the smug religious leaders and my parents and like elders that were just like, oh, you'll be back.
You'll be back. Yeah.
This is a phase.
Yeah.
I know you think you're so smart. And just like their smugness of just like pushing the chair out and being like, welcome back, little one. Like, I told you so. That is like, that's the humiliation, right? That's the putting the crown of thorns on and being flogged and being like, oh, look at your king of the Jews, right? It's like this moment of I have to carry the cross up and humble myself before the people that I'm like, I will never bow down to you. I will never come back and say, there is a God and maybe there is an afterlife. Like, it's never going to happen. Forget it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's just, even my therapist to a point where I was like, she is religious and has this kind of like, every time I get really, because I'm like really I was into Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and these kinds of like very intellectual atheists that would have these very poetic ways of kind of like shutting down, Christian destroyed kind of like videos.
Yeah.
And I was like, have all that lingo and that awareness and can like go toe to toe with people and be like, well, actually, did you know about this thing and this thing? And that's why you're wrong. And having to like drop all that and recognize that that's a defense mechanism, right? To
Correct.
manage the trauma. And then go, yeah, maybe you were right, Mom. And maybe you were right, Dad. And like, maybe there were some things about Reverend Moon that I really like. And maybe there's things about church camp that I really like. And maybe there was things about those rituals that I really like is difficult because I feel like I give all the bad stuff a pass. And that's the thing about forgiveness is it's like, if I say this is okay, I feel like then I'm also endorsing the abuse and I'm also like letting that. So, and I conceptually don't believe that's true. It's like you can forgive somebody for the wrong they did you and not like condone that violence or whatever. Yeah. But it's hard to like detangle that emotionally.
Absolutely. And I think when you're coming from a place of spiritual trauma that is so deep and simultaneously have such a desire to reclaim it, that work takes a lot of time and tenderness and grace, to just use the word, both with yourself and with other people, to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to kind of hold those tensions. And I think like I struggle personally whenever something is presented to me in a dogmatic way or in a black and white way. Probably because I know that even just in myself and in my emotional life, if I'm being black and white about something, I'm not resolved about it. I'm not holding the reality of the nuance. I'm pushing against nuance as a self-protective strategy.
Right.
And I think so much of the church that most people know is built on that. It's built on control. It's built on fear. It's built on absolutism.
Right.
And it's not made to be a container for nuance. And that is what we need. And so I think that's why you see so many people, borrowing from mysticism, borrowing from Judaism, borrowing from mythology and witchcraft and, ancient medicine and physical practice and creative practice, because they're trying to find a container that feels like it can hold all of them safely.
Right. It's difficult, right? It's like the same thing within us. Like the whole self-love thing in therapy is like learning to love all of you.
All the parts.
Right. And it's like, oh man, like I've got this big ridge on my nose and it kind of sticks out and it's kind of big, but somehow I have to like, all right, Trueson, that's your nose. It's the only nose you get. And maybe I'm going to love that it's, the way that it is or whatever. I have this like big mole on my chest that I had cut out because it was like this big brown spot and I just like hated it and got not really bullied, but people like, ew, what is that? And I cut it off or had like it removed. And then the fucking thing starts growing back. And I'm like, what is this? This feels like something out of a movie. Like the color starts to return. And I'm like, and I went to see a specialist. And like, well, you could do another thing. I'm like, we're just going to leave it. Like, I'm just going to learn to accept.
We're just going to learn to love it.
Yeah. Yes. There you go. Not just leave it, but love it. Learn to like embrace it. So now I'm trying to wear like shirts that show.
So that's showing. Yeah.
And people are like, what is that?
Because it's like a reclamation.
Right.
Of this thing you tried to cut out of yourself. And unfortunately, it's just there.
Right.
And so you have to figure out how to hold that and work with that and actually love that.
Amen. Hallelujah.
It's hard.
Well, this has been fantastic. We have another kind of final portion of the show.
Okay.
Where, speaking of spiritual and mystical, I have these spectacles.
Oh, great.
That's what they're called. And when I put them on, it allows me to see people's creative energies, or it's not really that. I put them on and I get visions. And I'm tapping into kind of more psychic practice. So if you would be so kind, I'd like to, if I get your permission, I'd like to give you a reading.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
All right.
I would love that.
So here's how this works. I'm going to put them on and I'm going to see things. I don't know what it is, but you should know what it is. At first glance, it might, in many cases, you'll immediately know. Some cases you won't know. So you'll have to think about, where that reference is. It could be something that's very literally happening in your life or just happened, or it could be a metaphor, but we'll figure it out. In most cases, I'll have no idea what it is. So here we go. Okay. I'm seeing a cave painting. There's a crackling fire the light is flickering off the walls. And I'm seeing the classic hands and the buffalo and the humans throwing spears on this cave painting. I'm seeing a spiral, much like these, and this kind of like spiral pattern is there. I'm hearing voices distantly and around wherever that fire might be, kind of murmuring in a language I don't understand. Are you aware? Does any of that make sense to you?
I can see it.
What is a cave painting in your life right now?
A cave painting in my life right now. I don't know that there's a cave painting in my life physically, but I think I have been in a season of sort of resignation and almost like cocooning or going back to essential elements. So, for me, that conjures a sense of just needing to get down to the very basics, like back
to the beginning.
Back to the beginning, down to the embers, and just sort of get fortified to begin again.
The cave painting's quite beautiful, by the way. It's very I think often people have a hard time appreciating how difficult it is to draw in that style. Try it. Your drawings aren't going to look anything like that. Then also try it with like ancient methods and tools. Not easy. But there's something about it, especially with the way the fire is lighting on it, that's honestly, it's gorgeous to see. So maybe there's beautiful tapestries within your personal cave, within your place of solitude or your inner sanctum that needs to be appreciated.
Probably so.
All right, let's see if we can get another vision here. I see you. You're talking to a man. He has short, kind of it's silver hair, and he is presenting you a box, a small box. He's kneeling in a posture that is very humble. It's not like a proposal. It's like he's presenting this item to you, and there's like a golden light inside, kind of like what was that movie?
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. It's like that, but it's a smaller box, and he's probably mid-40s or so, and you seem. I think he's kind of apologizing. That's what it looks like. He's presenting some kind of peace offering, and you haven't decided whether you're going to receive it or not. You're just kind of looking. You don't seem this person owes you something, and it's your decision to decide if you're willing to accept this offering or make him pay the full debt that he owes.
That resonates.
Is there a person in your life that matches that description?
I think that there is a relationship in my life that sort of fits that dynamic. I think there were parts of my relationship with my dad that didn't get reconciled before he died. And so a lot of my work and my grief with him has been, letting go of some of those things, trying to understand them differently, and also trying to find the gift in his death, which I'm afraid how that sounds out loud, but I think just recognizing what he can give me now and what we can have together now that he has moved to another plane.
Wow. Okay, I have another vision. This one is...
yeah. Are you sure?
Yeah, we've got one more. This one is...
Are you sure,
you want to take a beat?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, cool. All right. It's pretty profound.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, by the way.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you appreciating the...
Well, it's just the visions. He doesn't choose when the visions come.
I'm telling you, dead ass, on God.
We'll have time to process.
No cap.
Yeah.
I don't have any... I get these things. I don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
You know what they mean.
Yeah.
This is the last one we're going to do for the show.
Okay.
You are driving a Barbie Corvette.
Naturally.
And next to you is Mickey Mouse. And he is smoking a joint, like a big fat joint. He's got his feet up on like not the dashboard. They're like right on the mirror, the side mirror. It's a convertible Barbie Corvette. And you're driving, and you just flipped up the mirror because you put some lipstick on and you're kind of like looking at it. There is, rock music playing. I'm trying to see if I can figure out what song this is. I don't know. I'm hearing the Strokes. I that could be me. I listen to them a lot. So I don't know if you listen to the Strokes, but it's the Strokes.
I love the Strokes.
Oh, yeah? And so the Strokes are playing.
What song is it?
It's the Knock at the Door. I don't know which the name is. Da na 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 da 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 na 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 na.
Wait, don't sing too much. We'll have to pay for the rights to use it.
Okay.
Because that was so accurate. I just want to make sure.
Oh yeah, that's the song. And you're like driving into the sunset. You and Mickey Mouse. Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of like it's sort of cartoon, the sunset. It's kind of like this classic desert, California, New Mexico maybe thing. And wherever you're going very carefree. You have this kind of punk rock attitude, kind of like no fucks given.
Mm-hmm. How old am I?
It's current. It's contemporary.
It's funny that you say New Mexico, because I've always felt like, I don't know how to say it, but like part of my soul contract is in New Mexico, or like that's where I lived in another life or something like that.
What about the old Michael Mouse?
Michael Mouse. I mean, for me, that feels like childhood. You know, the whole vision to me sort of sounds like a return to 17-year-old self, like all the parts of you that have always been there. Like the Strokes, I loved when I was in high school. I listened to the Strokes a lot.
You're giving me goosebumps, by the way.
Yeah.
I didn't. Anyway, continue.
And I feel like it's just, obviously it conjures those like Thelma and Louise visuals as well. But I think it's probably just like going boldly in the direction of your destiny.
That childlike confidence, that like complete, there's no concern, there's no fear, there's no worry. You're in charge. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing that with me.
Appreciate that.
Those were beautiful.
Thank you. Well, this is rounding off the end of our time here. We're so grateful
Feels
that
like
you
we
came.
just started.
Yeah, I know. We could keep going. I was like, we didn't even get far enough into plants or talk about. I had more questions about writing, and we didn't really get there.
I don't even think we talked about writing. That was fun. That's fine.
Yeah. Well,
where can people find you?
Oh, yes.
What are you most excited about right now? Any of your work that you want to highlight for people to check out? You can be like your Instagram, website, whatever.
Absolutely. Where can people find me? You can find me at megshep.com. You can find me on Instagram at Megan with 8 M's.
Oh, 8 M's.
8 M's.
Because 7 M's was already taken.
That was taken, but 8 was available. So you can find me there. And, you might want to get in touch with me about spiritual direction or tarot, or if you have a story that you're wanting to tell or have told, or if you need some support figuring out your brand's story, or if you like to talk about gardening.
Or if you want to just grab a meal.
Yeah. If you have an extra seat at your table at Amelia's and you're like, I need to just buy someone dinner, go ahead and give me a call. That's pretty much it.
Great. Okay. Well, that's pretty much the...
Oh, I do want to make one plug, something
Yes.
I'm excited about. I have a story coming out in Luxury probably next month.
Luxury magazine.
Luxury magazine. And it's really interesting. And it looks at the sort of magnetic pull of Oklahoma. And for all folks, we have so many folks who leave to do great things in other places and feel that pull back. And I did 4 interviews with different people who have done that, and they were really, really interesting. So look out for that.
Luxury, by the way, is the one that nobody knows how to pronounce.
It looks like Luxier.
Looks like Luxier. We're all just, but it's actually Luxury.
Yeah. Give it a read.
Yeah. Shout out to Luxury.
Megan, you were great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
I love you both.
Love you.
Yes.
A lot.
Love you too.
Thank you.
This is fantastic. Well, that concludes the time we have today. I want to thank our sponsors, A-Slut, Citizens of Sound, Pop House, Ian Upton, the historic Riverside studio, and me. This is our show, The Channel, and make sure you follow, like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And with that, remember to
keep the channel open.